This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring, ring, ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, just got done watching, what's it called? Havoc. Fucking terrible movie. I think I deserve a medal at this point. It's taken me about 4 viewings, four individual sittings. This is the first time, to be fair, that I watched some of it whilst not pretty tired. Just up late now on a Friday night, making bread. Finished my main movie of the evening and had a little bit of dead space time on my hands, so I decided to just put that film to bed. I think both of us have a bit of this kind of like compulsion thing where if we've watched more than half a movie, it's like, I might as well just fucking see it through. It's also directed by Garth Evans, who's directed potentially the best action movie of all time in The Raid 2. So I don't know how he's fallen this far. That Havoc movie really has nothing, really got nothing at all going for it. Really, really, really bad. But anyway, I'm not sending you a voice note about Havoc. I'm sending you one about Strange Darling, which I watched earlier in the evening. Started it with my wife. It starts off very intense. It starts with I believe the order of events starts with like a title card saying that in the late 2010s, there was a serial killer who kind of ran rampage around certain parts of America, and that what we're about to see now is the kind of final killings of this serial killer, and then it launches into a chase sequence, basically. Believe that's it. Sort of starts out on the road. Yeah, starts out on the road. Got a young girl speeding along the road in her little red car, and then this like guy in a massive truck snoring coke chasing her in his truck, and she like shoots out the windows and then hunts her through the woods and stuff. Anyways, it's pretty intense stuff. I would say pretty hardened as a film watcher. It takes a lot to ruffle my feathers. So for me, that was just like nothing, but for her, it was a little too stressful. So she went to bed, which is a shame really, because immediately after she went to bed, the film switches into like a dialogue scene, which is a good sort of 20 minutes long. Now it's not without its intensity, but it's not just one big chase sequence. That's not the whole movie. It's more of a sort of Tarantino, like Pulp Fiction type thing, where you're going to have like more adrenaline pumping, action-y type sequences, not literally action movie type stuff, but like physical sequences. And then you're going to have more kind of character dialogue type stuff. And there's many ways in which it is reminiscent of Tarantino, but I'd say particularly Pulp Fiction, maybe a bit of Kill Bill. I think that the most obvious indicator early on is that the film is going to be told not only in chapters, but chapters that are presented out of order. So I think we start with chapter 2, is it? No, we start with chapter 3, then it's chapter 5. And, at the beginning, I'm like, okay, all right, what are we doing here? Is this just like overly clever for the sake of it? Are you basically just trying to complicate something to try and make it seem more interesting? When like we've seen that before with some movies where it's like they'll complicate the telling of the tale in a way that doesn't improve the tale. It's just like, I guess, requires a bit more engagement from you because you're having to like piece it together, but it doesn't actually benefit from that. It's just sort of like needless. I think Dunkirk is a good example of that. But this one has a major twist up its sleeve. Can't remember if I considered that as an option in the early scenes. Because obviously there's a certain point where it's made clear. It's when we see the girl do the killing. I'm not sure if I was rolling that through my head early on. This girl, what's she called? Willa something. I've seen her in the first season of Reacher, which is another, much like Havoc, piece of brain dead testosterone that I've somehow got in my viewing history. And I've also seen her pop up here and there a little bit. I'm not 100% sure what. And then the main actor, I've seen him in various things as well. I think he's in Smile. Saw him in another movie recently. He seems to pop up a fair bit. And then you got a few other recognizable faces. Ed Begley Jr. Got Hank's partner from Breaking Bad. I think I might recognize one or two others. It's not a huge cast, but it's mainly a sort of two-header. And yeah, I actually quite enjoyed it. I selected it for the evening to watch with my wife because she doesn't like out and out horror, but she likes kind of like camp fun type stuff. Companion was a recent one that was kind of like that, where it's not really scary. It's more just a bit of a romp, if you will, like a bit of a kind of what's going to happen. Oh, now this person's got the upper hand, and now this is like just, kind of entertainment. And I guess I wasn't anticipating it to be as dark and intense as it is. Now, like I said, for me, it's still very much like a fun movie, like fun first, and I don't really find it like a remotely heavy movie or even that intense. It's just like fun. It's almost like watching like Black Mirror or something. It's just like fun, dark, sort of edgy entertainment. And I'm not sure what my wife would have thought of it if she had stuck it out past that really intense opening 15 minutes. But by the end of it, certainly it's just been a kind of, it's definitely not like an all-timer great movie, but it's a bit of that like Jeremy Saulnier or Tarantino kind of like a fun, violent romp. But it has got its own sort of identity. This director, I think it's JT Muller is the name of the guy. Briefly looked him up on IMDb there after watching the movie. It looked like he has one or two movies under his belt that aren't, at least on the strength of IMDb ratings, as highly regarded as this one. I'd be surprised if he doesn't go on to bigger and better things, or maybe not better, but bigger things. I think this movie, Strange Darling, should serve as a bit of a calling card for him to get something. Hopefully not a Marvel movie, but I can imagine him getting something pretty significant out of it because he's done a lot with very little in terms of budget resources. I liked the interesting score work, like both that like really intense score that's like original composition for the movie, that's just like weird sounds and almost like a heavy metal tinge to it, but also the like frequent use of piano music and old time pop songs about love, and it's got quite a few different musical elements to it that recur nicely throughout the film. It has got like a bit of a kooky energy, like the these old hippie doomsdayers that they found in the mountains, with their like broadcasting some sort of like I don't know, I couldn't really catch on to what it is, but some sort of radio broadcast or something that they've got pumping out into the atmosphere all around their house, and big breakfast that they have. And, it's got lots of like weird, quirky little things. Again, it's not like one for the ages, this movie, but it's got enough like bits and pieces to keep you entertained. The actual chase horror stuff, going through the woods, the car chase, stuff like this is decent, definitely. Again, don't think this is like that scary of a movie. I've seen better car chase scenes. I've seen better stalking someone through the woods with a gun sequences. I've seen better kind of like Mexican standoff type, like, got a couple of people in a tight situation here. Like everything this film does, I've seen better of it, but I also thought this was done quite well, and it held my attention. After that opening 15 minutes of like pure cat and mouse, he's got the gun, she's running away. After that, we go into the motel scene. We go initially into like a car scene. And she's saying, "Are you a serial killer?" And he's saying no. And like, I enjoyed that. I think the chemistry between them was really good. I think this Willa, I forget her name, Willa something or other. She's brilliant in this movie. Like, she's really, really good. Much better than I've seen her be before. And he, in the few little horror movies I've seen him in, he's been consistently pretty strong, and I think he's really good here as well, because they both have to play victim and serial killer, right? In the early scenes of the movie, he has to sell that he's the serial killer without making it not make sense when it's revealed that he's the victim. And in the early scenes of the movie, she has to sell that she's the victim, yet it makes sense when it's revealed that she's the serial killer. And considering how much they have to do, they've got to do like action, they got to do dialogue, they got to do kind of like erotic sort of romance type stuff. They got to do a lot of stuff through, like, whilst maintaining all of that baggage of having to make both sides of the coin work for the audience. And I think they do a brilliant job. And yeah, that there's the major twist that she turns out to be the killer, but there's also like other little twists, like, for example, that when she utters the safe word, Mr. Snuffleupagus, whatever it is, like that whole scene of like the initial kind of S&M type play, where when it first cuts to that, it looks like he's strangling her, killing her. Then you realize that he's doing it under instruction. She's enjoying it. Then you realize that he's not actually getting her where she needs to get. Like, it's not enough for her. Then a reflective scene on that. Then him going, I'm gonna like go to the extra level here, but you as an audience member thinking, oh, now he's actually clicked, he's snapped, because he's a serial killer and he's going to really kill her. And then the safe word, and then it ends again, and then like it just keeps on going back and forth. And that whole stretch in the motel, which kind of crescendos with the drug switcheroo, and her then in the toilet, like, takes off her wig, like throws his phone in the toilet, sees the car. Like, it's fun stuff. I like how that whole sequence plays out. And I think that's the best that this film has to offer. The chase action type stuff is still good, but I can almost imagine, like, a lot of times when you see these small indie movies, you'll find out afterwards, oh, it's based on a short film. And then you go watch the short film, and the short film is just one scene of the movie. Like, if that middle sequence in the motel, and I forget which chapter it is, but if that was made as a sort of 20-minute short film, that would be like kind of maybe the strongest version of this movie. Of course, like, you up the budget, you up the runtime, and you get like all of this chase stuff. Again, I think it's well done. I think it's good. But I was really, really locked in when they're in the motel, and then when they get out of the motel, especially because we already know what comes after the motel. In fact, I think we've already seen at that point that she has bear spray in her hand when she gets into the freezer. So we're kind of the last half hour of the movie is sort of like, okay, I guess we got to watch it all play out. We know from the opening title card stuff that that the killing spree ends in, is it Mount Hood in Oregon or somewhere? It's definitely where the film takes place. So we kind of know that, like, it's going to conclude presumably with her death. I mean, you'd expect that would be the way a serial killer movie would end, but at the very least her incarceration. So it's winding down now. You don't know whether she's going to kill him or how exactly it's going to break down, but you know that you've already seen the psychological part of the movie where it's, are they this? Are they that? Are they flirting? Do they not like each other? Like, is she showing some of her true self? Is she not? Is it all a complete fantasy, complete act? Like, once it goes to the final half hour and it's more of a just straightforward, she kills him, he kills her, like just killing. That's the movie's kind of not jump the shark, but it's your classic. Like, we're now very much done with the best of what this movie has to offer, and now we're going to kind of just see, a bunch more kills, maybe some cool little moments, but nothing too interesting. But the overall takeaway for me is that this is a good film, a good, like a great look at a new talent. Like, this guy's written and directed the movie. Like, if this is the best thing he ever does, then fair enough, like, c'est la vie. But you could totally see this, or I could at least totally see this being the precursor to him doing great stuff. It shows a lot of promise, and the lead actress shows a lot of promise for maybe more meaty roles in the future, although this is kind of a dream role for a young actress. There's not really like much of this kind of much parts with this much depth out there that she's likely to get. Even that end shot, which is very showy, like from an actory type of thing, but she really sells it. Like, she's really able to do the dying in a seat thing very well. So yeah, good little flick, nice little genre flick, nice little something a bit different, a bit stylish, a bit interesting. Perfect for me Friday night viewing. And yeah, it'd be interesting to know what you think of it.
Hey man, nice to hear your thoughts on Strange Darling. I'm after watching the movie now a minute ago, so my thoughts will be much fresher than yours. I'm not able to record my voice notes from my park walk today because as I look out the window, it's completely pissing rain. So I've just had my lunch and I was watching a bit of The Irish Traitors. But while everything's fresh in my head, I'll give you my thoughts on this one. So I had heard about this movie from another podcast, and it's kind of been sold to me a little bit wrongly. Now, again, this is to the extent a little bit more than I told you the other day you would enjoy a movie and you thought it would be a fun-loving romp. This was sold to me in a way that, I don't know if you've seen the movie, but if you haven't, you won't get it, and if not, then I won't sell the movie down the river, but movies like Piercing, don't know if you've seen that movie, where something is presented in one light, but it's plays out a little bit different. Maybe that's all I'll say. And so I had an idea where I thought this movie was going, but it wasn't the movie I got. And thank God for that, because I was still a little bit clueless and along for the ride as well, with the various twists that we do get in Strange Darling. And I feel like one thing to say about this movie is it disarms you with its lack of ambition masquerading as ambition early on. You can imagine that if you hadn't seen a lot of movies and you saw this movie, you probably would think this movie did a lot of things different. I think we mentioned it when we were talking a few months ago with Triangle, I think it was. You mentioned when you saw that movie, you thought it was doing so many cutting edge things based on the age you've seen it on. And now when you rewatched it, you realize that a lot of those things were from elsewhere. So with Strange Darlings early on, it kind of counted against me how many movies I've seen, because we got the title cards about the serial killers, we got that soundtrack, we got somebody running, we got that grainy film footage. And I'm thinking, okay, you saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Cool. Are we going to get your version of this? And it's crazy the way the movie making process has been influenced, where we get filmmakers now wanting to make their version of that movie rather than just having an original idea. And I don't fault movies for that at all. I just think it can make you feel a little bit jaded and sometimes wanting more in the movie you're getting. And what happens to me is I just more think, okay, we're going to hunker down for this type of genre movie now. That's how I make my peace with something that's a kind of copy stylistically and their version of that famous movie. I'm just thinking, okay, we're gonna get a different take on that type of aesthetic. Is it set nowadays? Cool, that's the movie I'm watching. Then we get, as you said, this movie will be told in 6 chapters. This is chapter 2, or whatever it starts on. And I'm thinking, okay, well, we get the Pulp Fiction timeline thing. Okay, we're gonna get a little bit of a timeline thing. I remember in the early 2000s when, or was it the early 2010s? I can't remember. I feel like it was 2000s, where every movie tried to be clever for the sake of it. For a while, it was heightened. It was influenced by movies like Seven, influenced by movies like Memento. I know that came out in 2002, I think. But we got this wave of, okay, we gotta up the stakes. We gotta up the stakes. And now we get people who've grown up on those movies just trying to do their version of them, as I said. So we get the different chapters, and we get that chase sequence. And I'm pretty bored, to be honest. You mentioned that it's intense. It's probably because, well, you said you scare easily, and horrors and slashers are your bag, and probably watched it late at night, although it's pitch dark here at 12:42. This horrible incoming winter that I craved on a summer hot day. But I was pretty bored at this point. and we get the chase sequence where she's running away and he shoots her car and is screaming. It's hysterical. And I'm just checked out a little. And then we get the sequence in the car. Now, I should say, at this stage and prior to that, I was a little bit under the impression that they were in on this together, and this is a type of sick thing that they act out. Now, I can't remember what the podcast I listened to said, but it said something along the lines of it's not what it seems, which may have affected things as well in what I was viewing early on top of the stylistic choices and the narrative non-linear choice. But then we get the conversation in the car, and like you mentioned, Pulp Fiction, but I'm really enjoying that conversation just as a scene by itself, and I'm not worried about the previous things. I'm not worried about what chapter we're in. The movie is just settling very much into a groove, and I think her name is Willa Fitzgerald. She's brilliant. I actually hadn't realized she was the girl in the opening scene at this point as well, because she wears a wig and I haven't seen her very often. Don't think I've seen her before, but she really sells so many different emotions and so many different wheels of persona archetypes in this whole conversation in the car and this whole conversation in the hotel room. She's naive, she's vulnerable, she knows what she wants, she is reluctant to pursue what she wants. And this is the initial scene in the van. She's just doing so much with her face and her expressions and how she complements the dialogue with her acting, which is really important. And the guy, I can't remember his name, but he's very good, solid, very solid presence. Never trust the guy with a mustache. And I think you put it perfectly when you said that both the actors in this movie, they have to do a lot of very good work for you to see them both as the victim and the perpetrator. And I think that's very true. And the movie hinges on that, really, especially when you have to scene fill based on the sequences after you get this hotel sequence. And I hadn't considered at all that she was the serial killer and that she was the one that was going to switch. I was expecting him to switch, but I also, as I said, had considered that maybe they're in it together, but the movie was so generic in its taking of other ideas at this point that it disarmed me that this idea works so well when we get to switch up and she turns out to be the serial killer. And if you go back to the pilot of Buffy, where we get this scene of a damsel in distress and she's being followed home by a guy at night or something like that. Maybe she knows the guy. I can't remember now. You rewatched Buffy more recently than me. And the big twist in that pilot was that it was the female that was the vampire, and then she kills the guy that you think is actually going to do something horrible to her. And at the time, that was such a brilliant moment, and one of the reasons why Joss Whedon back then was so good. And let's just say the Buffy pilot came out in 1997, 2007, 2000. So basically 28 years later, things have changed significantly, and we need to pull off a few masterstrokes in order to present something to get us in that same way, like the Buffy pilot. And this movie pulls the wool over our eyes in the same way that the main character, played by Willa Fitzgerald, is able to pull the wool over her victim's eyes. And that's a very good trick. And again, this is when the movie's at its strongest, is in moments like that. And when we see the scene where the visual represented as red, and then she switches and she takes off the wig, and he takes the ketamine, and then we see her switch up to absolutely unhinged. And as you said, there's various levels of unhinged, there's various levels of red flags, there's various signs of things to avoid up to this point that leads to the most extreme version of this. And it reminds me of Barbarian, where, without spoiling that movie, I know you've seen it, but the scenes with Sarsgaard when they're sharing is it an Airbnb? The writer said that in order to create tension and in order to create a level of unnervingness, I think he took red flags that guys give out in a dating book or a dating manual that a woman had wrote in order to see what to avoid in guys. So the reason why we're so unnerved by Sarsgaard in that movie is because he's showing loads of red flags, and in a way, so is the character played by Willa Fitzgerald. And the main thing that interests me a lot about this movie is, and I'm sure you're more seasoned than me, so I'm not sure how much mustard this statement will hold up, but I feel like this is a horror movie for men and male fears. And again, there's a whole literature out there for female horror and from the female's perspective and what they're scared of, and the serial killer and the knife being a symbol of penetration and all that stuff. This movie is in a big way based around male fears, especially in 2025, or well, this movie was made in 2023. And I hadn't seen a movie that takes the horror, takes the slasher, takes the serial killer genre and uses it in this way. Now, obviously, we've had stuff like Gone Girl that's touched on things to an extent, but this movie takes the red flags when you're meeting potential women and relationships and uses that to unnerve you. And again, as the central actress says in this movie, men will do anything to get laid. So there's a tightrope between trying to get with a woman, whether it's casual. These situations usually would be casual because you can do crazy for a night, but not a lifetime. So there's a tightrope between, well, am I gonna get mine here? How much of this type of behavior do I need to go through before I can just have sex? There's that type of thing in the early layers of that hotel room, and then it ratchets it up and up. And we've heard of the praying mantis version of the female archetype. It's usually in monster movies, like something like Species, where she uses her sexuality to snare men and eat them and kill them. And does that movie with Scarlett Johansson, is it this? It's not The Skin I Live, The Skin I'm In. I can't remember, where she is in Glasgow and she's using her attractiveness to snare these men as well. We've seen it in a monster movie since, and so we've seen the praying mantis. We've never seen the crying mantis before done this well and done in this way, and it's very good. And I had quite an angry reaction. Now, obviously, we're in the sense of the movie, but you ever wonder why some characters really anger you more than others? And it's normally from the other side of things in horror movies, where you have the jock being obnoxious, where you have the bully cheerleader, and then you're okay with them being killed off within the confines of the movie. I've never really had it from the point of view of the killer from a male perspective. I've certainly had it where there's been horrible male bad guys who there's stuff to women in movies that I'm angry almost on women's behalf. But in this, it's a little bit more personal, and I think they use it really well in this, that type of fear. And I've also experienced and also known men who have been the victim of crying mantis. Obviously, they didn't get chopped up or anything, but it's brilliant that they use it in a movie like this for the antagonist and how she gets out of situations, the way she can switch on a dime. And yeah, that is a really good element to this movie as well. And that's what I enjoyed. That's what carried me through a little bit after the scenes in the hotel room, where she's constantly switching in between crying and killing, where she's runs over to that hotel, and especially with the police. There's a great moment there where Hank's partner in Breaking Bad, I can't remember the actor's name, he is wary of the situation, but the female isn't, and she appeals to the female. And I also like the little wrinkle they give the killer, where she's reluctant. She's not a mindless killer. She has a switch in her, and also she lets people go, which is quite unusual. Now, I think, again, like not any horror, but a lot of horrors, this movie probably could have finished 30 minutes later, like earlier. And again, it's just guilty of stupid things. Like the way when she's handcuffed to the freezer and she sprays him with, what is it? The spray, the bear spray, is it? And he, even though she's handcuffed, he runs towards her blind and then gets killed is ridiculous. And you could say, well, that's what happens in horror movies. And that's true. But I know what I'm going to get when I have a McDonald's, but I still get indigestion, is what I'll say to that one. So it just annoys me. And it annoyed me because I thought the movie was rolling well at this point. And then once we start getting into the overindulgence, the false finishes, the continuing of the movie, it's just one of the reasons why I don't really mess with this genre very often, because the movie's 1 hour 30 minutes and it probably could have finished after an hour. So once the cop dies, and I think they could have got a bit more mileage out of that if they had a little bit more chasing in between that. Now we recontextualized the reason why he's chasing her, and how I think they could have got something more there, but they didn't. And maybe the choreography wasn't as good or polished in order to make that exciting anyway. I don't know. But when the other cop shows up and she's in the car, and then she kills the cop, then another car shows up, and then she gets killed by the woman in the car, and then there's literally about a 7-minute sequence of her dying, still shot. I just think it's moving further and further away from what's good about the movie, and it's moving more into what really annoys me about this genre. But it's telling that it annoyed me because I had gotten into a very good groove and expected a little bit more by that point. And I think that's where the McDonald's burger gives the most indigestion. It's when I'm enjoying the burger a lot and forgetting that it's McDonald's at the end of the day. So yeah, I like the movie. I'll like to see what this guy does next for sure. I'll give him another chance. Not that this movie is anything other than a good time for me for the most part. But yeah, we'll see what he has to do next. And I'm very interested to see what the actress does next, Willa Fitzgerald. I think she's in the Scream TV series as well. But yeah, she's got it. He's definitely got it.
Yeah, she's really great, isn't she? Since watching the movie, I've read a little bit about the making of it, and she was the studio tried to get rid of her. It sounds like a really troubled production. It's a Miramax movie, obviously years after the Weinsteins, but had a reputation back then for like being like the best studio in town in terms of like what they were making, but also like one of the most heavy-handed and kind of Miramax and Harvey got very, very involved. And it sounds like this one, it's a bit of a throwback to that era because he doesn't have like some sort of like amazing record of like making great classic movies. I think he might have like one or two other movies that didn't really set the world on fire. And he wrote this script, or I can't remember the details now. It's been a few days since I've read this, but something like he either presented the script or he just started pitching it. They were like instantly like, we're buying this, like this done deal, like this is amazing. Classic, like they can see a good thing when they come across it. They can spot the talent and everything, like, you know, old school Miramax vibes of like just like so good at identifying talent and everything. And then they had him shooting the movie, and like he was sending them dailies, and they were like, this is awful, we fucking hate this, like this is just, you're making a piece of shit there. And they were going to shut it down, and I think the production sort of convinced them like, well, look, you've already spent so much money on this, it wouldn't make any sense to shut this down now. And then they took the movie away from him, and they had another editor recut it in chronological order, and it would have gone out like that, save for the fact that, and this is a bit weird, but apparently the director had a clause in his contract that meant that his final cut, his version of the movie, had to at least get one test screening. So they screened it, and it just gets wilder and wilder and wilder. Apparently, halfway through the movie, one person in the theater shouted out, "This bitch is crazy!" And the whole fucking from that sort of set the screening alight, and everyone was having a grand old time. And then Miramax were like, "Okay, all right, I guess it's working with an audience, having it jumbled around." And therefore we got the movie we got, but a lot was cut. Apparently there's a massive big like river sequence that was cut and stuff. But yeah, Willa's performance, we might have never seen it had she been fired like the studio wanted. But yeah, no, I'm glad you enjoyed the movie. I know it's not exactly your wheelhouse, but obviously it's much more my thing. And I think, you know, whenever we watch a movie that's like leans quite heavily towards one of our tastes, then the other one struggles through a few bits of the like kind of, I don't know, the things that you just have to like accept as if you're like watching that kind of movie. And you identify the most flimsy piece of plotting the whole movie. Sorry if you're struggling to hear me now. It's a bit windy out here, trying to cover the mic on my phone so you get this as clear as possible. But yeah, that bit where they need to figure out a way for her to get the upper hand again. Now we know she has the bear spray in that freezer, so we know that there's going to be a reversal of power again, but we don't know how it's going to go down exactly. And initially I'm like, okay, he's going to come downstairs. He doesn't know she has the bear spray, so he's going to get up close and personal with her, and then she starts playing mind games with him, Hannibal Lecter style, and she is sort of getting in his head a bit, but he doesn't really fall for it. I'm like, okay, if it's not going to happen that way, how's it going to happen? And then she sprays him, and he goes sort of, falling around, as you would, to be fair. But conveniently, he falls exactly into the one place where she can, like, what does she bite his neck open or something? Like, the lens that I watch something like that through is very different from the lens that you watch it through. Because you're watching it like, oh, fuck, you fucked it up. Whereas I'm watching it, I'm like, could happen, could have. I'm always like trying to like silence anything that will ruin the intensity of the movie. So like when someone does that thing of like, they should be clearly just running out the front door, but instead they run down into the basement. I'm like, okay, it's fine. Someone might do that. Someone might do that. I'm just trying to protect the movie from me kind of disconnecting from it a bit. It's interesting to hear that you had listened to a podcast about it, and you'd kind of had that thing in your head that maybe like what we were seeing initially, the movie was not to be taken like literally, or I don't know. You said maybe you had this idea in your head that everything was not what it seems. I'm trying to remember now, because I read about this movie. Now I say read about it, I'm not reading an essay, I'm reading like a short little blurb. And I think it said something like from when the movie starts with a girl running out of the wilderness to the end of the movie, we go on a massive journey or something like that. It did have an element of that, like there's going to be, things are going to evolve over time. But I think it wasn't enough to sort of frame it as like, this is a twisty movie, because I definitely didn't have it in my head that, I mean, you said that you had it in your head that they were maybe in cahoots or something, which they are for certain scenes, in the sense that like we have that role play type, S&M type stuff where we think we're watching something adversarial, but actually they're both sort of working together, if you will, to experience that moment. But I had none of that. I'd absolutely, like, I took everything completely on face value. When I was watching the opening chase scenes, I took it as he's chasing her. When I saw the guy on the floor with blood draining out of his head, I took it as he's killed that guy. When I saw him kind of strangling her in bed, like not initially, but you know, when he kind of gets extra angry and he goes really like full tilt, I took that as like real rather than that's still part of the play. So like the movie definitely had me in the palm of its hand the whole way through. And I think, yeah, if you were a bit more savvy and kind of like considering other options, it's probably not quite as fun of a ride. But I like what you said about how the movie is sort of, it's not just the movie's pulling the wool over your eyes, it's Willa's pulling the wool over, I forget his name, what's he called? I've seen this guy in quite a few movies. Gallner, I think is his name. Kyle Gallner, maybe. Yeah, that's always a nice thing. It's the same in like The Prestige or something like that, where it's like you're watching some misdirection, and the experience you're having is misdirection kind of thing. Yeah, I like that. You mentioned that the film is sort of like a exploration of male fears and anxieties about dating. And like, you know, if you hook up with a girl and maybe she says she wants this, but ultimately, you know,
turned out she wasn't totally comfortable with that, and it's like exploring that in the way the Barbarian does with, or Barbarian and 1,000 movies do with the female experience. Just, Jesus Christ, not even worth that. Just popped into an old like decommissioned phone boot box to get out of the rain. Stinks of piss in there. Don't know why I thought that would be any other way. I'm just gonna shelter under the eaves of this post office that I'm hopping to currently. Very tiny eaves, more just a sign. Yeah, I don't know. I guess like I definitely agree that that's like an aspect of the movie. It wasn't one that I was really thinking of or tracking, but I was more looking at it almost like not from a male perspective or female perspective, but from the perspective of when two strangers go to a very intimate and vulnerable place with each other, which is what, like, you know, one night stands and everything are. You just don't know what's going to happen for either party. Both parties, and of course in this case one of them is serial killers, but probably planning from the offset to kill this guy. It's not really clear, but in a more general sense, like when this happens, both people are going into like a significant amount of uncertainty, and obviously an exciting element to that, but you know, it's an edgy kind of vibe within a movie. And you also touched on, which something I didn't mention in my previous voicemail, but I think it's one of the more interesting things in the movie, and it's not really brought into the movie until the end, or the sort of third act really. But she isn't killing like randomly, or what's the word? She's killing judiciously. Now, sometimes she does kill for her survival, like when she kills the manager in the hospital, for example. She's killing out because it's convenient for her to kill that person. It's strategically beneficial for her to kill that person. So she's definitely not above like cruel, horrible murder like that. But the major murders that she does, the murders that are like very premeditated, or like this big significant ones, like for example the police officer at the end of the movie, the police officer that's the sort of star of the movie, and certainly we're led to believe at least several of her previous victims running up to the events of this film. She has decided to kill these people because she believes them to be demons. So this is the frailty, and like obviously many real life serial killers, that this is the case, where she's actually sort of sees herself as some sort of, I don't want to say superhero, but she's like she's on a just and righteous mission. And that's interesting. I kind of wish that was explored a little more. It's doesn't need to be explored in great depth, but I think you could have been some interesting texture there if we got just a bit more of it. And I'm not talking about it dominating the movie. I'm just talking about it maybe being a bit more than like a few like frames inserted and like one or two lines of dialogue. Just give me a little bit more of that element. It would make her even more interesting. And yeah, you also talked about how the end of the movie, post killing your man, is a bit of a slog for you. Like you feel like you're getting diminishing returns. I was totally happy with the way it played out. But the stuff with the two cops I liked a lot, but that was really entertaining. As soon as she gets away from them, she's picked up by the other woman, I thought, and she's instantly killed. I felt that was really good, because it's just sort of indicative again of how no matter who you are, no matter what kind of a notorious serial killer you are, you get in a random pickup truck with someone, like they might just have a gun, like as simple as that, and that would be just the end of you. And then you also seem to not like the lengthy, long, continuous shot of her dying. I thought that was brilliant. So I don't know if I've quite seen that in a movie before, but I thought it was a really nice stylistic flourish to the end of the movie, and a really hard thing to pull off from an acting perspective. I mean, I think she goes quite big with that, with what she's doing, and I think she absolutely killed it. It looked amazing, and it was just and like many things in this movie, it was interesting and weird and different at I think this movie really benefits for having a bit of its own identity, which is what would kind of like bring me, or sort of compel me to watch more by this director. I don't know if I'm going to bother going back to see the Western that he's made before, or maybe that was more your wheelhouse, but I'm not sure if I'm that I'm not sure I'm that wowed by this film that I want to go back and watch a film that has been sort of poorly received in the past. But definitely, whatever he does next is intriguing to me.
Yeah, I mean, that Western by J.T. Mulner stars Luke Wilson and Chad Michael Murray. So even me and my Western hunts that I do will not be checking out that. Funny enough, as well, I did read about the production of the movie. If that story is to be believed, that that audience member should probably have a production credit who shouted out that line. And apparently the studio wanted to put it in sequence as well. And as much as I think the sequence is a gimmick to some extent, I probably think it works out better that it does take you a while to get your bearings. There's more to be gained from that, as I said, with the pulling the wool over your eyes. And Giovanni Ribisi is a cinematographer on this. Don't know how many movies he's done the cinematographer on, but it's quite nice to see someone who's an actor. Normally it's you do some directing, don't you? But no, he's doing some cinematography. So you might want to work his way up. It's a choice that you don't really hear of very much. And no, I think we just got enough of her not killing people. And anytime she hesitates to kill someone and ends up killing them, it's because they want to call the police. I think that's what happens quite a bit with the random people she does die. Ed Begley Jr. wanted to phone the police. The person in the hotel wanted to phone the police. And I guess sometimes she lets people survive because she's playing on she's a damsel in distress. So yeah, I think if we went any further in that, I think it would kind of ruin the point of it, which is to give us a little bit of color to this character, to let us know she's not a mindless killer, and just to make us wonder rather than know. And I think that's a much better place for it to be. And yeah, I mean, you've enjoyed the extra scenes and made a case for them, but it just gets away from the thing that was working in the movie. And that happens so much with horror movies. It just continues after the thing that we were most interested in is done, and it continues again and again. I mean, that scene with the cops, we got the best version of that scene when she was in the house tied to the freezer. And it kind of just continued again, and we already got running into the stranger scene when she ran into that house while he was chasing her. So it's just kind of repeating itself with different versions of a lesser thing without the intensity of the police officer in the hotel after her. So, but I guess that's what the horror crowd like to see, and I'm not that, so I can't have too many complaints about that. But yeah, let's see what he does next.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.